Hey everyone, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. Today's Super Bowl UFO commercial from Squarespace was the highlight for many. Directed by Martin Scorsese, this thing literally took me back to my childhood seeing Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind for the first time. The question is, are we alone, and what has been going on behind the scenes in Washington? Today we have retired Navy Master, so hard to say, Masters at Arms, Sean Cahill, joining us for a little primer on UFOs. Hopefully there's some people here that are completely new to the subject. And at the end of the broadcast, we have some breaking news for you regarding the Soul Foundation videos and a Good Trouble Show to match. But first, do us a solid and hit that subscribe and thumbs up button on YouTube. You can also find us on Twitter at Good Trouble Show and all other social media platforms at The Good Trouble Show. Leave a comment, share, like, give a thumbs up, and subscribe. All those things really do encourage these platforms to spread the word about our show. And Anyway, the other thing, we always need your help keeping the lights on. So you can join us, donate or become I'm tongue-tied today. This game has clearly had its effect. You can, for price of coffee, you can support us on Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. And so we always do appreciate that. Also, our super chats are open. Great way to support us. We can also find us on on all your podcasting platforms. Just search for The Good Trouble Show. Subscribe, leave a review for a podcast, preferably a good one. And so joining us today is, let me unmute him here, Mr. Sean Cahill. Sean, how are you today?
I'm well. Good to see you, Matt. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is your second time to come back on here on the Good Trouble Show, so we're really glad to have you back. You look great, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you're up to, which I think are quite exciting. So anyway, let's see here. So firstly, for the people that don't know anything about you, you're new to them. Tell us a bit about your career in the Navy.
I joined the Navy in 1995 and spent about a year and a half as a non-designated seaman. That's a pretty low level of training. When I first came in, the jobs that I wanted weren't available right away. So rather than go on delayed enlistment and stay in town where I was kind of getting into trouble, I decided to go straight into the fleet as a non-designated seaman, which is kind of like a swabby, just a generic sailor. I spent about a year and a half doing that before I put in a package to what's called cross rate over to Master at Arms, which is the Navy's military police force. And at the time, they were bolstering that service again because they had removed the Marine Corps from Navy ships. They had formerly been there to protect the nuclear arsenal. But when we removed the warheads from the ships, there was no need to have those security forces there anymore. So the Navy had to fill that role again. So there was a big rush to put a lot of badges on people at the time. But I submitted a package for that and it came through, and I spent some time in Texas going to the police academy and then going to correction school to learn how to run the brig. And after that, I mostly worked for the next few years, I worked in what we call straight stick law enforcement. I was a patrol officer at Naval Air Station North Island, at Naval Base Coronado, and down here in Imperial Beach. Following that, it kind of followed the same thing, but out to sea. I took my role as Master at Arms to sea and became what's called a Chief Master at Arms, which is the person in charge of the law enforcement personnel on board the ship, the command investigator, and the person who advises the security officer in their duties where they report to the captain. Often it's a position where you're independent and you're alone in your duties. Like when I was on the USS Princeton, I was the only law enforcement officer aboard and reported directly to the executive officer and then the CO. Following that, I got into interrogation investigations. I worked on an admiral's staff working in anti-terrorism. Quite a few deployments in the Northern Arabian Gulf, doing anti-piracy. Anti-piracy. What are called non-compliant boardings. Basically, what happened was as the special warfare mission became too broad for the Navy SEALs. They broke off a piece of their mission and gave it to what we call the Blue Water Navy. So they took a few ships teams aside and trained them up to their level, and then set us loose in the Northern Arabian Gulf. That was a lot of fun. 196 boardings total, I think, was what ended up on my evaluations. So we saw a lot of fishing boats. Didn't see a lot of trouble. But as you know, I'm most well known for, in 2004, being on board the USS Princeton when we encountered the Tic Tac fleet off the coast of California.
So, and tell us a bit about that. And actually, one of our mods just let us know that the game is actually in overtime, but we decided to pull the trigger and just go for it because we know it's getting late on the East Coast. So, everyone, you'll have more fun watching this than watching the game, I guarantee you. So let's talk about this 2004 incident. What exactly happened?
We were out in company. The USS Princeton was the air defense commander for the USS Nimitz Battle Group, and we were out in company with the Nimitz Battle Group doing exercises leading up to our deployment, which would be later in 2005. We were off the coast of California here in what we call Fleeta Hot, in around San Nicolas Island, Catalina Island, and north of the Mexican Channel Islands, and basically, Senior Chief Kevin Day was in the Combat Information Center, and he was starting to pick up contacts that were at a very high altitude, and then coming in immediately to a very low altitude above the water, nearly instantaneously, and then proceeding at a pace in a southerly direction in what looked like a flotilla at times of many craft, moving against the wind at incredibly slow speeds, and just overall doing strange maneuvers and exhibiting what we would call exotic maneuvers and exotic technologies. And over the course of that week, Senior Chief Day, in company with Petty Officer Gary Voorhees and a few others, and myself up on the bridge, coordinated efforts to, first of all, to run it down in the radar system and ensure this was not a ghost in the system. Once they had basically taken the thing apart and put it back together, and realized this is not a ghost in the machine, Senior Chief Day went to the captain of the Nimitz and urged him to as the air defense commander, to make his recommendation to the admiral of the carrier of the strike group to sortie aircraft out there. That's how we ended up with the famous footage and the reports from the pilots that they gave in the congressional hearings. Some of the most compelling eyewitness testimony and video testimony ever of a UAP. My role in that was mostly being there for the week and seeing these events, being present for them and observing them. As a police officer, I have a different level of attention to detail than a lot of people might. And I happened to be in a very good place to see these things, which was the bridge. Later in that week, the night that the aircraft were sortied, myself and another sailor who remains unidentified at this point had seen 5 to 7 lights off the port bow, turning counterclockwise in this formation and each disappearing at the central point of the formation. And it didn't match anything I'd ever seen before, not flares or conventional aircraft or anything else I've seen in the theater of war or while deployed. And so it was a pretty incredible event in general. I went to bed that night knowing that Senior Chief Day wasn't down in the Combat Information Center, and I don't think that the junior officer that had taken his watch would be interested in the subject. So I saved it for the morning. And that morning at breakfast was when everybody was smiling and saying, "You need to go check your email and take a look at this video that came in last night." I was astounded. Anybody who's worked with infrared equipment and with FLIR and those other systems, we know what we're looking at. We at least knew what we were looking at was not a prosaic aircraft. It was not anything we'd ever seen before. It was exhibiting very strange qualities throughout the different modalities of the FLIR. And we had a pretty pragmatic conversation right there. There were about 5 of us in the chief's mess, and I said, "Well, this is a Roswell event. This is pretty huge." And there was about one guy in the group that said, "Nah, it's probably DARPA. It's probably us. We wouldn't have reacted the way we did." That kind of sunk into me as time went by, because what a lot of people don't understand is I was not that they don't understand, but I was about midway through my career. And my career was very important to me. And your career in the military, your career in aerospace, these things they last based on your reputation, your integrity, your sanity. And I was never worried about bringing it up. I just kind of decided, well, this probably is a DARPA project. This probably is something that the chain of command knew about. I don't need to worry about it. I can get back to work worrying about anti-terrorism concerns and not these things that are going on. So I didn't become a believer. I'd actually been more of a believer probably beforehand, and soured for a long time on the idea of anything else out there after that event, actually.
And so at the time, you were speaking about the DARPA, about it possibly being a DARPA project. Was there any discussion at the time? It's like, hey, this is maybe our tech, or did everyone pretty much seem to be in the place of this is not anything we think we could probably create?
Well, at water cooler conversation, or behind the scenes in the mess, we speculated on just about everything you can think of, and a lot of us, at the time, were saying no, it was unidentified, or maybe it's a government program, but whatever it was, it sure wasn't anything we're used to. We don't recognize it. It doesn't seem to obey the laws of physics that we've been taught in school. But as far as any kind of official response goes, there was none to be noticed at my level, and speaking to other people, there was none to be noticed at the command level. Only personnel that were directly approached by the alleged personnel who came aboard and confiscated the radar tapes. They were allegedly given non-disclosure agreements. I don't know how far that extends, whether it extended up to the captain, the XO, or the command master chief. It did not reach me. At our intelligence briefing, we made a quick joke about it. We had a very crude PowerPoint back in 2004 of a little alien going across the screen, kind of like a Mars Attacks kind of thing. And we said that the captain said we had a very interesting week, but now it's time to get back to work. And that was all that we said in our intelligence briefings or in front of the larger command staff. Now, if a different conversation occurred in the captain's quarters or the XO's quarters, I wasn't privy to it. But in the chief's mess, we just kind of got back to work with what we had to do. We had to deploy to a war zone. We had a very important mission to do, and we really just kind of let it go behind us.
And the whoever confiscated the tapes, do you know, was it CIA? Was it DOD? Did you see these folks? Were they in civilian clothes? What any indication on who maybe took the tapes?
We don't know at this point. The personnel who were in contact with them are still under their NDA and have not disclosed that they were aware of who these personnel were, whom they represented. I would assume, granted, and I want to be careful here because I'm not a firsthand witness of this stuff, but I believe it's alleged that the captain was the one who gave the order to surrender the tapes to said persons. Now, who would these people be? I know a lot of people would speculate. My first assumption would be that they were Air Force personnel or AFOSI personnel. And from there, I think it's anybody's guess, of alphabet soup agencies who may have shown up. But in this case, you have to consider who would have had cognizance over this, who would have been monitoring message traffic for things like this. And I think the likelihood is probably with the Air Force.
Understood. And I believe we have, if I've got the right one pulled up here, this is from that encounter, correct? I think
Yes.
There's three of them. So what are we looking at here?
So according to Lieutenant Commander David Fravor, you're looking at a 30-foot oblong tic-tac shaped aircraft with no control surfaces, no visible means of propulsion. There are no tethering that could be noticed. What you're looking at is the gun camera footage. I don't recall the pilot's name who took the footage. I don't believe that it was Commander Fravor. But you're looking at something that was loitering over an area of the sea that was said to be roiling, that these were darting around much like ping pong balls, making right angle turns, kind of playing with the fighters, so to speak. And what we're looking at is various modes of the FLIR going through the different aspects. That was what we were sent on the ship. Now, I've been told there's a longer video. I haven't seen it, but what we're seeing here is representative of everything that I saw in 2004. I think the video we saw may have been slightly longer, but I think what we're seeing here in this video are the major phase changes of the craft that were witnessed on the radar.
Okay.
And those were the most salient points to get across to people who needed to keep their eye out for these things. You'll see going through those different phases that the optics really changed, and there appears to be some kind of field around the craft in one of the modalities, and then when you change, it's completely different. The craft is cold; it's not hot. That doesn't seem to make any sense. Not in a conventional aircraft way.
Yeah, it's and all of this came out actually for people that have not been tracking this topic. So all of this came out in a New York Times piece in what was that, like 2017? Glowing
Yes.
glowing auras and black money, the Pentagon's mysterious UFO program, and as part of that were the 3 videos. So we've got that one, and we've got, let's see here, we've got the what would be the I believe the Tic Tac.
That's the
Actually,
Go
no, this
Fast.
was Go Fast.
Yeah.
Now, was this a different ship altogether?
Yes, this was 2015. I believe this was from the USS Roosevelt. And what's fantastic about this is by all observation, we're looking at what we would classically call a silver sphere, which have been in uncountable UAP reports across the globe. We're not looking at something that looks like it's oblong. It looks like it's very circular. And I can tell you that having been at sea for a very large portion of my 20 years in the military, all over the Indian Ocean, the Arabian Gulf, the Pacific, I've seen countless strange things at sea. And one of the things that we see all the time are Mylar balloons. And whenever somebody lets their balloons go at a party, they basically go up into the jet stream and they all find a similar place to die, where they run out of gas and they fall in the water. And we have a garbage patch here off of the West Coast. I can tell you that's not a Mylar balloon. All of the debunking that I've seen, and that the officials that I've seen who have worked on these videos singled them out for a reason, because they were some of the best pieces of evidence that they could get out of the system and get out to us. And I think that they did a great service. That article in 2017 put me squarely into the subject for what looks like the rest of my life. And I had zero intention of being any kind of advocate like this or working this hard for anything just but my family.
Right.
But after reading that article, and after my phone started ringing, and a lot of friends of mine who had seen the article said, "Hey man, is that what you told us about back in 2004? Is that what we heard about?" And saying yes, and that's exactly what I saw. This is real, and I have a lot of work to do to get up to speed with it.
And in your judgment, from what you've seen, there is no way, as the debunkers like to they're kind of in their own reality, in my opinion, but the argument that you hear that it's balloons or the Atfleer pod jumped or malfunctioned or something like that, in your opinion, it's definitely none of the above, right?
Much like the subject itself, there seems to be 2 kinds of states of mind about this. Either there's something to investigate, or we must absolutely not investigate it and place every dispersion we can on it.
Right.
And it seems like the professional debunkers aren't interested in getting to the bottom of what it is. They're just waiting around to say that it's not the thing you want it to be. And to me, that at some point that speaks of how you're looking at this in a psychological fashion. I think that if you're not prepared for a lot of the obvious answers that are going to come with this, it can seem like something that you need to push away from your psyche. And I think that's what we see with a lot of these debunkers. But the real scientists, the people who are heavily invested, that have careers in physics and careers in cosmology and careers in aerospace, they take this very seriously. This hasn't been investigated for over 100 years because it's a nothing burger. There's very much something there. And the question is why is it so profound that we can't have a conversation in the open about it?
I do not understand why why we can't have a conversation about it. Sometimes I wonder if it's just with not the debunkers, because I think there's an agenda there, and I think certainly with many of them there's a financial agenda there. But the people that are really just sort of skeptical, healthily skeptical, how much of that is it's just too big a psychological jump to to really consider all of this. I have one friend who's a retired air traffic controller, very smart guy, and he hasn't been tracking what I've been doing, but I've spoken to him about this. Now, while he had never had any experience with UAP or UFOs, however you like to refer to them, while working as an air traffic controller, he does feel that they are there and they exist. However, for him, it is such an uncomfortable subject to speak about. He doesn't want to go there. And I can understand it is a lot to consider, and certainly shakes up your worldview. So I want to touch back to the New York Times article. And now I always say I'm not a ufologist. I'm not a UFO historian. I sort of consider myself of a hack of a talk show host. But one of the things that I would like to talk about briefly, if you could. Other than the three videos that came out in the New York Times article, the real bombshell in many ways was the fact that the government had been studying this. Of course, for the longest time, the government said after Blue Book, "Oh, there's nothing to see here. It's seagulls and Venus and all of that." But it turned out in the New York Times article that there was this program called ATIP. And what can you tell us about ATIP and who ran ATIP?
Well, ATIP was most recently ran by Luis Elizondo. Let's see if I can not get tongue-tied here, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And it was established in part by Senator Harry Reid and Inouye and a couple of others, basically about their concerns of, if I understand correctly, what came before, but most assuredly what happened in 2004 with the Tic Tac event. And a contract was awarded or was, and I may have some of my timelines here. I'm not, as you said, I'm not a historian, but Bigelow Aerospace was awarded a contract, and the investigation was done into this subject, a very deep investigation that also involved something called OSAP, the Advanced Weapons Application program.
Something, yeah.
Yeah,
some
special program, a special project, a special program. Right. But those are the first two modern being post Blue Book, post 1970s, 80s, 90s era programs that we've seen that have taken this seriously. And they pry out a certain history when we're going to kind of, pardon me if I jump forward here to the UAPTF, but we had a moment during the hearings with the UAPTF when the gentlemen were asked about the Wilson memo. And it would be ridiculous to think that they had gotten where they were in investigating this subject and were not familiar with the Wilson memo. And as someone who has interviewed people who wanted to lie to me over the course of a career over and over and over again, I didn't see people turning to each other and giving an authentic answer of not understanding what the Wilson memo was. I recall when it was asked, they turned to each other and said, "Did you read it?" "I don't know. I'm not sure. We're not familiar with that." And it became part of the familiarize yourself comment made by Senator Gillibrand that resonated with so many people. We're looking at program after program where someone on paper somewhere had oversight. And one of the first people we realized gave a damn about it was Admiral Wilson. And he went to investigate that. And of course, he can't talk about it yet. Hopefully he will someday. But other folks have talked about what happened that day. And he investigated a program that he had oversight of. And when he got down to brass tacks, he was told, "You're not allowed to know about this, and you're not allowed access to it." And he said, "But I'm in charge of this." And they said, "Sorry, you need to go talk to somebody else." Now, that's the basis of our problem. Where is the authority on this subject? There are obviously no checks and balances. The intelligence committees at Congress are not aware of this issue in the way that they should be. They're being briefed and they're shocked at what they're hearing. They want immediate evidence that can't be supplied because it's most likely in special access programs and locked up behind some kind of authority structure that they're not even aware exists.
And after this New York Times article, do you think was that the thing that sort of precipitated or motivated people like Senator Gillibrand and Rubio to start looking into this? Because one of the things that I believe they mandated, if I'm correct, is this the creation of the UAP task force, if I have my history correct.
Well, yeah, folks like Chris Mellon, Lou Elizondo, and others worked really hard behind the scenes to make sure that what had been worked on at ATIP was not lost to history, just because a few bureaucrats didn't get briefed or whatever the story was around the folks who made sure that leadership didn't hear about this earlier when they could have done something about it, more officially before it was brought out in the New York Times. But I guess what we're dealing with here is just over and over again, you see this come up somewhere, but it doesn't come up in the halls of Congress. It's been investigated before, but when you look at who investigated it, they had a vested interest in pushing it away. It's not that different than the people who were placed in charge of the UAPTF and in charge of AARO, who all have relationships within the intelligence and aerospace community, that if the rumors around this 100-year-old subject are true about reverse engineering, parceling out of technology to different conglomerates or different industry are true, there's a great many people that are finding themselves looking to protect themselves around this subject right now. And it's unfortunate because while we've seen incredible whistleblower protection, we have courageous people coming forward and telling what they've seen. Does that whistleblower protection extend up into these leadership areas where some people feel like they're holding the bag? Now, I don't know how we get those people that are holding the bag to come out and tell the truth and tell us what's in the bag.
Yeah, I would venture to guess that the threat of going to prison is probably a pretty powerful pretty powerful incentive for these folks to not move the ball forward if they think that they are certainly in some kind of legal criminal jeopardy. But it does speak to, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but the fact that who exactly is making these decisions, who exactly is deciding that Congress doesn't need to know, who is deciding that presidents not need to be fully briefed on this kind of stuff. It just boggles my mind. It'd be like not telling the president about the existence of Russia. It's like, how can the president conduct foreign policy on behalf of Americans if he doesn't know what's going on because some 50-ish SES government employees have decided for themselves that they're all temporary employees. They don't need to know about that at all. I'm curious, going back to the Navy thing, are you hearing if through your connections that this is still occurring out on the open seas with our carrier strike groups, that they're still running into these things?
So I was hearing a great deal of traffic like that up until about 6 months ago. 6 months ago, when we the threat condition, roughly about 6 months ago, the threat condition changed on most of our installations up to a more advanced condition. We have Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta is what we call them. Alpha being the least restrictive, Delta being the most restrictive. Delta would mean that there was a terrorist attack occurring at the time somewhere. You're kind of directly into it. The morning of 9/11 would have been ThreatCon Delta. And usually we're in a lesser threat condition, and that means different levels of operational security. So about 6 months ago, when our operational forces ramped up throughout the world in a few different areas, a lot of that chatter stopped, rightfully so. Because it's nice. I'm glad that chatter stopped. All chatter stopped, and families knew when to be quiet and when to exercise operational security. So the rumor mill around here in San Diego kind of backed off of UAP about 6 months ago when the conflicts really started ramping up for our folks.
And this, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that this was probably mainly due to the Middle East conflicts, or?
Yes, I am directly saying that up until everybody got told to hush harder because we went into an advanced threat condition, that was the rumor mill, was that the ships were going out into the training area. They were still encountering things. They were still getting footage. There were no accidents. There were no casualties of any kind. No, nothing, no collisions or no harassment or anything like that. But the radar and visual sightings kept occurring, from what I'm told.
Wow. Yeah, I certainly hope more of that comes forward, or more footage comes out. But something tells me after those 3 videos were released all the way back in 2017, I'm not holding up much hope that additional gun camera footage will come out. Now, going back again to what was going on in Congress, so they mandate this UAP task force, and they come out with this. Let's see here. This. Boy, I'm tongue-tied today. I think it's the game. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence issued this preliminary assessment on unidentified phenomenon. Now, I have to say, because I've heard people say the government has said these are real, and when I see the government, how they're behaving today, it's like the polar opposite. What am I missing? In the UAP task force report, did they say these are real? What specifically what am I missing?
Well, as always with this subject, there's a lot of things people have to find in context. And there seems to be no one willing to take a leadership position and state what we know, state where we are on the subject, to give us a background of the last 80 years, to deconflict things, to, things like the conflation of Project Mogul, the crash test dummies that were dropped 10 years later, all of these things put together into one pile to explain Roswell by the Clinton administration. It's time to go back and undo those things. And nobody has. Again, who's in charge? So if they don't have the information, if you're given a report that you have to find the context in to say, oh, there were X amount of reports. Out of those, we determined that this many were prosaic, this many were likely prosaic, and this many were completely unknown and exotic. We've forgotten that science means good. Throw out all the stuff you know, focus on the unknown, and continue drilling down until you've identified it. And we're talking about things that, by all accounts, for almost 100 years, have been dancing around our most advanced fighter aircraft during times of conflict and in war zones. And somehow the idea is, what filters out of that is, we're not worried about it. It's not a threat to us. Now, I'm not saying that it's a general or direct or precise threat, but the idea of another species that is far more capable of us, or another intelligent entity, or whatever it is, controlling these levels of technology, let alone just the kinetic energy that they carry. Even if they're not armed or warlike, the kinetic energy alone is incredibly destructive. These things are national security
I agree.
items. They absolutely are. And by the people who see the data, they take them completely seriously. ATIP wasn't set up because people were looking for ghosts. The people who like to debunk it, they like to cherry pick the things that they find are strange. And I'll say this, my wife made a little boo-boo today, and she decided to check out the video, and people were waiting around, and somebody was blasting me about recalling a stupid, what they felt that a UAP experience that I had, one that I wrote a song around about something that happened here, and it was a very strange experience. The whole thing was very strange, and his whole reason for debunking it was because he thought it was stupid, because it didn't fit the mold of how he thought this type of thing should go. Now, I don't know what happened that night. I have my memories. A lot of them involve classic UFO stuff. But the fact is I'm not 100% sure what happened that night. And I will agree with you, if you want to use such gauche language. It was stupid. It didn't make any sense. And it's why it stuck out. And it's why it's still something that I want to know about. It was not a dream. It was not a hallucination. And it's something that has happened to many people. It's not just seeing something in the sky or seeing something from an aircraft. There are other things involved with this that get uncomfortable and that involve memory and psychology and control, it appears. And I think that also plays a part in why people become so reticent to talk about this, because it's not as simple as little green men exist and they're here. It speaks of deeper portions of our society. It may speak to our origins. It may speak to our spirituality. It may speak to our place in the universe. And we don't seem to agree on those things. We all have differing opinions that are still good enough to send us to war and to commit genocide and atrocities, to get another person to at least not not just to stop disagreeing with us, but to stop having an opinion at all, because our opinion is the only opinion to have. The follow-on conclusions of this are that we're not ready to play, in my opinion. And if that extends out to our financial system and our society, I can see where a lot of leaders would be reticent. But the fact is we can't turn a blind eye to this anymore. It's present, it's global, and it has encroached so far into our normal daily lives that it's now just in the area of our military operations all the time. So,
which is concerning. I mean, you hear people say. People like Stephen Greer or others that'll say, this is all peace and love. Personally, I'm not convinced that is the case. But if these things, which I believe this to be the case, are operating above our land-based strategic nuclear deterrent and disabling Minuteman missiles or retargeting them, all this kind of stuff, and operating in restricted airspace, that, in my mind, it is a national security issue. I don't know how else you can look at it from any lens. And going back to the criticism that you saw regarding your post from some debunker, I've
sure.
decided I'm going to nickname them Debunkers, because some of I'm not talking about the skeptics. The skeptics are one thing. The people that are professionally debunking, doing it for clicks, and rewriting Wikipedia, we've covered that extensively, and that stuff is in further development. But it just boggles my mind. And I think it was Jeremy Corbell I was talking to, and actually I heard Joe Rogan say the same thing. They just don't read the comments, and a friend of mine told me once, like, tweet like a seagull. Fly in, take a shit, and fly off, and don't look back. And that's exactly what I do. Yeah. I could really care less what these people think. Yeah. They're operating from a very preconceived notion, and these debunkers, all they do is they latch on to one little thing like a dog on a bone, and they won't let it go. Somebody had said, "Oh, why don't you go debate them?" And everyone said, "You know what? They'll find that one little thing. They won't let it go." And you're not going to change their minds, because they have an agenda. Their agenda is to debunk, either for money or for some psychosis or whatever. I have no idea. But anyway, yeah, man, I just let that stuff roll off.
But they don't bother me. The comments don't bother me whatsoever. And the only time I do go look, I actually enjoy the negative comments more than anything else, because I want to know. I don't think I'm going to get through to everybody. I just think it's funny the amount of people that take another person's existence personally. Yeah, and I think it's really funny, because I want you to be you, and I want me to be me. I don't want you to be me.
Right.
That would be really boring. But
I disagree. But
yeah, well. Well, I'm a debunker myself, though, man. I get sent so many videos and people who want to say, "Look, this is what I saw and this is what happened," and I have to tell them, "Listen, I understand. I've had similar experiences. There's not much we can prove to each other here. What's important to you is how it felt for you, how you responded to it, what it meant to you, and that's all that matters. Proving and constantly trying to prove something that's so elusive. If this was easy to prove, it would have been proven by now. Frankly, I think it has. I just think that the misinfo, disinfo, cover up, whatever you want to call it, over the years has been so successful that people don't believe their own lying eyes.
Yeah, that is for sure. I think that It just the whole thing blows my mind. But it is a very difficult subject to prove, I guess, in a way. At least all you can tell people about are your experiences. I've told this story before. When I got into this 2 years ago, absolutely nothing had ever happened in my entire life. Never seen anything weird. Never seen anything weird up in the sky. I have a cinematography background. I have an aviation background. I know what I'm looking at up in the sky. And as soon as I started looking into this stuff, orbs began appearing above the house. And I didn't talk about it for a long time. Again, I wanted to be more focused, or wanted people to just listen to the message, not my experience. But it continued to happen. My wife and I had all kinds of just weird, bizarre shit happen in the house that people would characterize as paranormal, and it was weird. I had no idea why that was happening. Of course, I have no idea why this orb has shown up. The last time was over Halloween, so now I think was the 9th or 10th time. I don't keep a journal, but it was funny when I first came out with, admitting that this stuff has been showing up above my home in LA. Mick West posted about it, and he said, well, Matt must have just had that, I think he said, preloaded in his mind. In other words, I just, it just magically appeared. Although it didn't matter that my wife saw it, and we've had family friends that have seen this thing above the house. I have no idea why it's here. Seems to be aware of what I'm doing. I have no idea if it's ET or what. I mean, I have no idea where it's from, and I don't think I'll ever know where it's from. But my point is that all of these experiences are very personal, and you just can't judge somebody, for that, or make it a statement of fact. Sean didn't see this, or Matt made this up in his mind. I mean, who are these people to say that? Just the arrogance of these debunkers, it just makes me just absolutely crazy. Now, I want to jump to, we were talking earlier about whistleblowers and whistleblower protection by members of Congress. So the New York Times article was, of course, a really big deal. After that, Congress mandated the creation, sort of speaking of debunkers, of this office called AARO, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, led by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. What is your take on how his tenure went? And I don't mean as far as like who he is as a person. I don't know the guy from Adam. I certainly have my personal opinions about it. But in your judgment, how do you think that whole thing went?
In music, they would say he was an industry plant. He's unfortunately too close to the stakeholders of the secrets in all ways to be a proper oversight for this. But I think above all, we can look at the title of the office gives away the intent of the personnel that invented it and were running it. They wanted this resolved. They wanted this figured out with a doctorate stamp of approval, and yet another iteration of grudge, sign, blue book, etc. ad nauseum, of saying, look, we thought we saw some cool stuff, but it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. And we can't talk about the interesting parts because of national security. BS. That's ridiculous. To follow the UAPTF with such an uninspired, lackluster, and frankly offensive take on the subject, and now the I can't help it, just a milquetoast performance with zero results, and then a sweetheart tour of a well, I'm off to do greater and bigger and better things now. Well, where are you landing, buddy?
Right.
It doesn't surprise me that it went the way that it did whatsoever. The personnel that did the work for the UAPTF put in the work, provided the evidence, provided what we were told was a substantial amount of unexplained exotic events, anomalies, true anomalies that, as we have talked about, have hovered over our national security assets, our nuclear assets, our battle groups, our field operations and theaters of war that have, these UAPs have moved across military installations with absolute impunity and only been caught because the sensor suite that was able to pick them up detected them, because, regular eyeballs and visual systems were not. We got smoke blown up our rear ends by a career bureaucrat. And none of that's personal. That's all brass tacks, what some of these folks do for a living and what they'll continue to do. He'll keep getting paid to say what people want him to say.
Yeah. It's so funny. Well, I mean, actually, I say it's funny. It's not funny. So the nuclear angle is something that I've been interested in for a very long time. I've been a student of U.S. and Russian nuclear policy since the early 90s. So, of course, the great work that researcher Robert Hastings has done on this subject of UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, interfering and tampering with our nuclear weapons, that has always been of great interest. And I think some of the strongest, most documented evidence of this phenomenon that is not balloons, it's not seagulls, it's not something just drummed up in your head. So I've had on the show, I've had former nuclear launch control officers who had incidents of UAPs disabling their flight of Minuteman missiles. So I had Bob Salas on. Yeah, I think I had him on twice, and then David Schindley, and also I had Mario. I'm blanking on his last name, but an above ground nuclear security policeman, military policeman that was stationed at one of these Minuteman squadrons, and they went and testified to AARO. Robert Hastings helped facilitate that, and the reports that came back from these guys on their experience with AARO, in particular Sean Kirkpatrick, they were not flattering. Firstly, there was no recording made. They just, at the other end, they just made notes. Sean Kirkpatrick actually got into an argument with David Schindley. David Schindley said to Kirkpatrick, "There's no way you're going to ever figure this out with the scientific method, because these things exhibit physics that we don't understand. It's not repeatable, blah, blah, blah." And Kirkpatrick apparently kind of went off the deep end and started talking about black holes and all kinds of stuff. But really kind of the takeaway that I got from all of these people, well, all of them, three of them, was that they were not taken seriously, and that Kirkpatrick did not seem to want to do the work. Another good example from David Schindley. So David has this encounter. He was on a Minuteman I squadron in the 60s. Of course, after the thing, he gets pulled in for a debrief with AFOSI and the base commander. So he goes and he gives Sean his story, and I guess he wanted to wrap up the interview, and David said, "Well, don't you want to know who the base commander is? Don't you want to know who the AFOSI officer was, who was there?" And he didn't want to know. He didn't care. And I debriefed Schindley well before I had him on my show, and he shared with me some of the emails and the communications with Kirkpatrick and AARO, and it was literally amateur hour. What was sent to these nuclear guys, as a matter of fact, they were sent a form email from AARO that was geared specifically for people that were dealing with special access programs like crash retrieval, things like that. Mm-hmm. They got the wrong email, so they sent all the nuclear guys an email. AARO did, Kirkpatrick, that wasn't supposed to go to them. It was about SAPs and a bunch of other stuff, and how that would have to happen in a SCIF, this, that, and the other. So Schindley emails back and says, "Hey, you're sending the wrong email." And I forgot what the reply was. And then so when are we meeting? They sent another email. They don't list the time zone. It was literally like Keystone Cops. And another source that was on the UAP task force had told me that they had data. This is, after UAP task force was dissolved, they had data on the crash retrieval program, made several attempts to reached Sean Kirkpatrick, left messages and all of that, emails and whatnot, and he never called back. He never emailed. He never said, "Hey, what do you know about this CR program?" He didn't do jack shit. And it is so, in my view, it's so obvious that he did not want to find the answers. I don't know if he was told not to find them, but it's just the incompetence of the leadership at AARO is just mind blowing. And I'll share one other thing. I'll stop my rant. I was having a conversation with a Senate staffer that deals specifically with national security issues, and he had asked my opinion on what I thought as far as like, should I send, and this was directed at me, would I send whistleblowers to Sean Kirkpatrick? And I told this person, absolutely not.
Right.
There's no way in hell I would do it, and I certainly wouldn't. Anyway, sorry for my rant. Please go on ahead.
I think that were AARO successful, we would have an answer, because there's obviously a question to be answered. They pretended that there was no question. When we look at, let's talk about this for a second, because the debunkers have zero legs to stand on this, and the skeptics have zero leg to stand on in regards to incursions over nuclear assets, because these are not things that a gate guard saw and didn't tell anybody. And when these things happen, they go into an advanced threat condition. They respond. They observe. They wait to find out what's going to happen. The security at our nuclear installations it's not a Walmart cop just letting somebody walk out with a candy bar in their hand. It's not like that. So also what we're talking about is, if you're a skeptic or a debunker, then you don't believe that any of these things exist. Okay, so who for the last 50 to 60, 80 years, however long it's been, is operating unknown craft in violation of numerous laws and statutes in and around DOE assets? Who's doing that? It's a violation of the law. So to not investigate that further is dereliction of duty. And so I want people to realize that we're not talking about just a couple of nuclear weapons. It's not just Hiroshima and Nagasaki that occurred. The history of nuclear weapons testing was nonstop practically from the moment that we dropped the first test weapons to some of the treaties that didn't happen until the 80s and 90s. And if you watch graphics of this, pardon me, it's like a nonstop detonation all over the southwest of the United States, in and around the South Pacific, and in various areas of Asia. If the phenomenon were truly concerned with stopping our nuclear technology, with what we're doing to the planet with our nuclear technology and our weapons, then why didn't they stop a single one of these thousands and thousands of tests that occurred?
I've never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Never once, not a single report of a nuclear test being stopped by UAP. They didn't stop Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And given the technology, we consider them to be ultra temporal, to be exhibiting faster than light travel. That indicates that they understand time in a different way than we do. The understanding where Commander Fravor's cap point was and beating him there, all these things, they talk about it. They reveal a workaround of our reality that we don't quite understand. We're talking about something that has, and again, I'm not with Stephen Greer that says they're all good. I'm not with other people that say they're all bad. I'm saying it hasn't showed up with a name tag and its bona fides and told us who the heck it is and what it wants yet. And that's what bothers me the most. And until it holds still and identifies itself, I don't understand its intent, its opportunity, and its capability far outstrips my abilities.
Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
No. Please.
Yeah, I agree. Because you have to stop and ask yourself, and I agree. We don't know that it's bad, but when I look at it, and in almost all the literature, these things exhibit some form of signature management. They are operating in a stealthy way. They're not revealing themselves in mass. You have to stop and wonder, is this a preparation of battlefield behavior? We just don't know. And maybe again they look at us as ants and are just observing and that's it. But that's a very interesting point you brought up regarding the nuclear testing, and perhaps they were trying to gauge what capabilities we have, but past the testing, the significant amount of literature, stuff that came out of FOIA, not from John Greenwald, regarding these nuclear incidents of an entire flight of 10 Minuteman missiles being taken offline, not for just a couple hours, but for a couple of days. Electronics being fried inside the Minuteman missile. Missile warheads being retargeted, or the targeting information completely wiped out. And this not only has occurred here, it is well documented thanks to George Knapp. It has occurred extensively in Russia as well. Now, we don't know if it's happened in China. I would suspect that is the case. I would suspect this has happened with our sea-based nuclear strategic nuclear deterrent, the Trident missiles. I don't know. I would love to find out about that. But at the end of the day, I just don't see how you can unequivocally say these are all friendly things and it's all love and light if they're operating in such a stealthy manner. And I agree, the debunkers they don't have a leg to stand on at all. And that is well documented. And the other thing you have to think about too, people like Bob Salas, David Schindley, Mario Woods, all of these all of these folks held top secret clearance. The nuclear launch control officers go through a nuclear surety program to evaluate their mental fitness, and that they'll turn the key and they won't try and do something unauthorized. So these people are going through the strictest vetting probably possible, because they are controlling the world's most destructive weapons. So let's move on. Let's talk about a whistleblower. So I think it was in June, the Debrief came out with this article. Intelligence official says the U.S. has retrieved craft of non-human origin, and this revealed the existence of this former U.S. intelligence officer, David Grush. And now I think a lot of people that are watching the show may not even know anything about David Grush. So I want to play, it's about a 3-minute clip that sort of summarizes what all he has had to say. And what we're about to play here, this is the clip where he testified in front of the House Oversight Committee about what he discovered. So let's watch. Oh, sorry, not that one.
The UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower.
Thank you. My last question, and sometimes I know that you have also said some of these answers in the past, but we're trying to get them on the public record as well, which is really important. Mr. Grush, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General, and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the inspector.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Wow. So in your experience as a former military, some people, the counter argument you'll sometimes hear from the debunkers is there's no way that something like this could have been kept secret for so long. Do you think it's possible for the government to keep something like this secret with no leaks, keep it from the American people?
I mean, come on, we're talking about it. Your show's about it. It's my new career is to advocate for it. There's thousands of movies discussing it. The X-Files television series took it incredibly seriously and brought the zeitgeist out into the public eye and showed them the semi-reported reality of what's occurring around this subject. There are no secrets around it. There is no aspect of this that hasn't been explained by somebody. The problem is that the misinfo and the disinfo. And it's kind of like when I talk to a lot of witnesses, the folks that I have a hard time personally, because I haven't had an experience like they have, the folks that have allegedly spoken to an entity and can tell me its location in the constellations where they live and their history and how that works for their soul. While I'm very into meditation and consciousness, and I'm very aware of what has been written about it, I've studied so much of it that I can't find a homogeneous message. There are too many different stories, origins, shapes, forms, etc. So if we're dealing with some kind of insane pardon me for saying insane, but some kind of really vast multiverse, like in the Marvel movies, where at a certain level of development, you might understand how to step next door into realities near yours and sample it or exploit the resources in it. I don't even know if that would work. But if we're dealing with something like that, it might explain the incredibly different stories that come out. But I have to say that of all those differences, there are things that are similar. There are things that can be gleaned from it. And that's the human part of it. That's the experiential side. And that's been being reported for as long as our history has been written down. As long as we've been scratching something down on something else and trying to remember it later. This has been a thing that we have talked about. The conflation with religion is obvious. Most of the religions discuss someone coming from the sky. Is that what we were dealing with here? That would offend the pious and the devout, but not all of them. So we're dealing with something here that to call it a secret still, the only secret is the origin and the conclusions that we should all understand. And if that has if those are earth-shaking answers, if those are things that if catastrophic disclosure occurred overnight, as some people say, and the wool was pulled off and the veil was pulled back and we saw everything immediately, are we ready for it? Is the financial structure of our society ready for it? We didn't fare too well when we were all sick at the same time.
That's for sure.
So
yeah.
we're going, and look, there's not an aspect of our society that you can't look at and say it's not rigged. I'm sorry, everything's rigged.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the horse still didn't crap in the middle of the living room. Even if somebody rigged it to happen, there's a pile of steaming crap in the living room, and if we ignore it, it's going to get worse.
Yep.
So it's ridiculous at this point to consider that it's a secret. Now, let me add one more thing. We saw everybody come out of these most recent behind closed doors skiff hearings with Congress, and you saw some angry folks. They thought they were going to walk in that day and meet. I don't know what they thought, whether they were going to hold a spaceship or talk to an alien or get the proof or get told that it's a super secret, top secret program from way back when. I don't know. But they came out angry because they still didn't have the answers. And that's because even though you've got investigators that can give you the answers, you got to do 3 more steps. You got to put together another task force. You got to perhaps do it clandestinely. You have to show up at these locations with the person who's the owner of the program, on record. And you basically have to raid the joint. And
Which
who's
is sad.
who's willing to do that right now?
Right.
I mean, you're a major aerospace company somewhere, and a bunch of congressional, boots show up with probably the FBI, shut you down, take all your stuff, man, they better find it all, because their careers are over if you got word and it's gone, or if it was a plan. I mean, this is unfortunately the most ultimate cloak and dagger nonsense you can deal with. This makes the Cold War look silly.
It truly does. And as I tell people, because I'm on the left side of the aisle, and we tend not to believe in conspiracy or quote unquote conspiracy theories, but I'm saying this is the one that is actually true. Doesn't mean that all of them are true, but this one certainly is. Now, one thing that happened, and I want to touch a little bit on this, when Sean Kirkpatrick finally left AARO. I don't know if he was forced out or what, but he got this cushy job at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, which, by the way, is a nuclear laboratory, which, by the way, means that you have to work there one of the nation's top security clearances. So keep that in mind, that this guy who did really a pretty shitty job at AARO is moving over to a nuclear research lab and has to maintain, and he can't have that job without having Q clearance or TSSCI or whatever it would be. So this guy leaves, he goes over there, and he starts trashing David Grush. He starts trashing members of Congress, and basically what he's saying, which is a talking point of this Green Street clown, is that all of these people in Congress have been duped by I forgot what Green Street calls them, a spooky religion or something like that, some line of crap. I don't know what goes on in that guy's head, but
yeah, watch his stuff.
Yeah, but essentially what Kirkpatrick is saying and what these professional debunkers are saying is that Congress was snowed under. They were bamboozled by Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and all of this horse shit. I mean, I know the answer, that it's obviously didn't happen, but I'm just curious, what is your perspective on that? And then also, how does that make you feel, knowing that this guy who was director of a Pentagon program did all this stuff and is now working at a nuclear lab?
The whole thing is ridiculous to me, and I think that if we just really just settled on the idea that almost everything he did was, the words were placed in his mouth by DoD mouthpiece Susan Go, who has been around so long in this position as DoD mouthpiece that a lot of people are calling her Baghdad Bob. She is in every picture with him. She has no stake in the UAP fight, but at every chance that she has been able to reveal her intention, it has been to destroy any interest in this subject whatsoever. And let's not forget that you can't find a good employee page or a history for her. You can only go to her LinkedIn page so she knows that you looked at her page. That is the #1 Google search for the DoD's public affairs officer, is her LinkedIn page. That's ridiculous. How long has she been in this job? How many administrations has she stretched over? You can find the papers she's written on psychological operations that discuss changing societal norms, that discuss changing things in the American public for the Bush administration and for others. You are talking about the top dog, the golden child of psychological operation literature within the government at the moment is the DoD mouthpiece that says there's nothing to see here. That is the person that's leading Dr. Kirkpatrick off the dais to meet his folks that are going to take him to Lawrence Livermore. It's not a secret. It's a con. The people at a certain level within the government know what's going on. They've been directed not to let this happen, and they're fighting it tooth and nail. And when you look at people like Greenstreet, who used to make a living actually investigating this because it was entertaining, and he did it with former personnel who claim to have worked in these halls and have backgrounds in it. They're willing to debunk these things for a nickel. They've been repeating the same arguments for years and years, but they provide no new evidence. They just, as you said, debunk, they undercut. This is all from the narcissist playbook. If it happened, it wasn't that big of a deal. If I did it, I'm sorry. You know, I mean, we all know how they go. All they do is deflect and obfuscate. They don't look at the history. Thousands of us have written articles outlining, hey, even if we go back to 1947, this program record, this program record, this program record, stretching over 100 years, then ATIP. And all that you're going to hear is, oh, ATIP only got $12 million or whatever it was. That's no big deal. That's 5 hammers. That happens all the time.
Dog on the bone.
Man, let me find $12 million. If it's that easy, you know, let me know where they're growing. Because I can get a lot done with it. But it's a con, man. There is a level of civilization that knows what's going on, and they've conned the rest of us that you don't get to know. Eat your gruel and shut up.
It just blows me away. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but Stephen Greenstreet, he actually worked as doing propaganda for the State Department, and those skills I think are continuing. And you know, who knows?
Unapologetically gross in the way that he conducts himself, a professional troll of the new style that I just find completely repugnant.
It's really nuts. And as I've said for a very long time, it's like, you know, I've seen UAPs, I've experienced it. Frankly, nothing would surprise me. You were talking about like seeing videos and stuff and looking at it from a skeptical point of view. I do as well. It's like, I have no idea if what I'm being shown is real. It wouldn't surprise me if it would. It wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't. But if you don't believe in something, like for instance, Sean, if you said like Chewbacca is real, and I'd be like, okay, Sean, whatever you say, I'm going to go along my merry way, let you tweet about Chewbacca is a real thing, and let you have fun, knock yourself out. I'm going to go do something else. I wouldn't then spend the rest of my valuable time on Earth debunking your Chewbacca story. It's like, I've got better things to do with my time. But if I'm going to debunk your Chewbacca theory, literally 8 hours a day, writing on Wikipedia and other outlets for some people, I certainly would want to get paid for it if I'm going to do something as a full-time job. And where I'm going with this is, I think there's some people that, you know, they just debunk, you know, because they're some kind of psychosis or something going on. But
I think
there
it's
are a
about
lot
control,
of
man.
Yeah, I mean, but there are a lot of. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. If when you come to them with a photograph and an experience, and even if you're completely humble about it, look, I don't know what the heck this is, man, but it was weird. Can I tell you what I observed and what occurred in my perception? And at the end of it, they look at the photograph and they look at the account and they say, that didn't happen. You're full of crap. You're saying aliens took him. Like, I never said aliens took me, man.
Right.
I never said I saw a flying saucer. I said I saw something in the sky that was a circular shape. I'm a cop. I was raised to describe things. Okay, so we're encountering somebody who's already decided, no, this does not exist. And it's counterintuitive to everything we know that we're gonna take witness statements and evidence and completely throw them out because we don't want to deal with what that thing might be. It's literally the lion on the edge of the firelight, and the chief is telling you, nah, there's no lions, no such thing as lions, everybody's asleep. It's not true. And maybe it's not a lion. Maybe it's a raccoon that's figured out how to do a great ventriloquist act.
Or
That's
Chewbacca.
freaking interesting. Yeah, or Chewbacca, man. Seriously. Right. I mean, I'm not a Bigfoot guy. Okay, I could debunk it 6 ways to Sunday about why there's probably not a big primate running around in the forest outside of Tahoe. And I don't mean to make fun of it, but I can't wrap my head around a really good reason for me to apply myself to look for Bigfoot, and therefore I don't. And I don't think that everything I've ever seen that's done in the field is really great scientific research and should be, called cryptozoology. But who cares, man? They're
right.
trying to find it out, and I'm not going out there to do it. And there's evidence, and if it's all a big hoax, come on, man. All these different things. How many people wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to dedicate my life to some nonsense that takes so much effort, and if I get caught, I'm ruined. We've only caught a handful of people making this stuff up. When you start making it up, people realize it, and you get exposed. You know, if you're shooting off flares to convince people this is still, you know, the cool things are happening around your thing, you get exposed. If you lie, you get exposed. So it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And the thing you have to ask yourself too, especially the people that constantly attack Lou Elizondo and David Grush. I mean, these people are bonkers. And you look at the amount of abuse, online abuse, that Grush, Elizondo, and I'm sure others have incurred speaking about this. It goes back to what you're saying. There is no incentive for them to make this stuff up. Mm-hmm. Zero, none. These people have held multiple tickets on TSSCI programs. It would make absolutely no sense for them to make any of it up. There's no incentive. There's no financial incentive, and it's just crazy. Now, speaking of pushback, one of the other big things that happened was the UAP Disclosure Act that was from Democrat Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Mike Rounds, Republican, and it was a very bipartisan thing. 63 pages of legislation on UFOs for the National Defense Authorization Act. It used the term non-human intelligence. I think it was 23 times. Talked about eminent domain with craft of non-human origin. All of this stuff. This legislation was absolutely huge, and of course, according to the debunkers, they just made this stuff up because a few people were whispering in their ear. Now, I know all of us were very disappointed that this legislation did not pass, and my understanding is that it was stripped in the House by Republican Mike Turner and others. So, is that an example of this disinformation, this pushback, either from the government or private aerospace? What is your take on what occurred and why it was just really kind of stripped down to nothing?
Well, we've got the unfortunate aspect of this overhanging, who is it in charge? Who knows who's saying don't tell the people, or who's putting pressure on DOD to ensure that certain mouthpieces say certain things. I'm not quite sure who that is. But what we're looking at so much here already, and it's so disappointing to me, and it's one of the reasons that I'm working more in advocacy and harm reduction and understanding around this subject, is because it's now politics. It's now another thing to trade off something for your district, something for your cronies, you know, in Delaware, something for the company that you're not supposed to be representing, that you're really representing every day, because every one of our legislatures or lawmakers at some point are bought and sold. I'm a left-leaning person, moderate, you know, myself, but when I look on both sides of the aisle, the bank accounts never match the salary.
That's for sure.
There's not a single, and I don't want to say there's not a single person in Congress. I think there are a couple of folks that are really trying to scrape it together and be real people. And guess what? We've never heard of them.
Everybody Say that again. Sorry, I missed that last part.
The folks that are really scraping it together and trying to be authentic and real, we've never heard of them. They're right out there working for their constituents. But most of the folks we see, they go to town halls and they tell their constituents what they're going to do. They don't say, what do the representatives who came to this town hall want of me, and how do you want me to go back to Washington and represent you? They have their agendas. They have their pork spending. They have their agreements. They have their lobbyists. And at this point, it's all politics. So until we may need catastrophic disclosure. We may need, as much as I'm against leaks, because I think that damages our national security, we may need someone to leak something profound. Because there's an entire industry out there that we're completely unaware of, that probably has 1,000 different ancillary industries that would pop off of it. We haven't even gotten, you talked about eminent domain earlier. Are there companies that for the last 80 years have been given technology that gave them an edge in the field? And how is that going to play out in our courts? I'm sure that if these pragmatic conversations around the follow-on consequences of a 100-year BS lie, if some of our leaders are finally understanding that, they're realizing what a shit sandwich they have on their hands.
Shit sandwich, indeed. And what I keep coming back to is that this is a democratic oversight issue. Hiding stuff from Congress. I mean, how can they legislate on our behalf? How can they make sound decisions if a lot of them, the good ones, obviously, are not given visibility into this thing? And it really makes, it's very upsetting. So I was part of the team that wrote the article with Chris Sharp and Josh Boswell regarding the Office of Global Access and their crash retrieval program, and how this whole UFO thing, the entire portfolio sits under the CIA. But one of the things that we discovered, and we spent a very long time researching this, cross-checking this with multiple sources, very high-ranking sources, was that this crash retrieval program, some of these operations are run by a Joint Special Operations Command or Air Force Special Operations Command, and these vehicles are recovered. But a lot of times they are, because how I understand it is that we are able to detect in real time when these things go down. And the Office of Global Access, which that's their job. OGA, if you look on the internet, you will not find much on them. But Bin Laden, that was under OGA. This is all under the CIA Office of Directorate of Science and Technology. But the whole idea of OGA is that we have agreements in place with friendly countries that we can insert personnel, special operators, tier 1 operators to conduct operations, and you don't have to go through State Department and all of that. And we also have the ability to do that in denied territory as well. So OGA, they did, I'm guessing it's National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, detects these things going down. That goes to OGA. OGA then delegates it to JSOC. Maybe a SEAL team goes and picks these things up. But one of the things that I found the most disturbing was that the whole thing is run so ad hoc that sometimes it is tasked to JSOC out of the Office of Global Access, but other times it's tasked to private aerospace. So private aerospace, they have their own security companies such as Blackwater or whatever, and these are all staffed by former tier 1 operators or tier 2 operators out of SEALs, Army Rangers, or whatever. But basically, private aerospace is being told, and I don't know who makes this decision, but here's where this thing is. You guys go get it, take it back, and work on it. And there's no accountability. Congress isn't told about it. One of the things we were not able to find out is what the decision tree was. How did they determine what was given to JSOC and what was given to a private aerospace in terms of the recovery operation? There's no accountability. It's just crazy.
If there's no oversight, then what you're talking about is breakaway. For all the people who like to discuss the deeper possibilities surrounding this subject, one of them being a breakaway civilization, you are looking at, if there is not a breakaway civilization, this is how you get a breakaway civilization. When you don't have oversight over a technology that outstrips the remainder of the populace, something that alludes to provide free energy, that alludes to outstrip the military arsenal, and goodness forbid, if we're correct about the physics being observed, if humanity had access to this technology right now, are you telling me that we have weaponized time machines? I know that that's a ridiculous idea for a lot of people to wrap their head around, but the reports that were written around this subject, the defense research documents and other things, take this quite seriously. And the space-time metric that we're aware of seems to be broken by this phenomenon. So all of these things are incredibly important to our intelligence committee, our armed services committee, our executive branch, legislative branch, you name it. This should be priority number one, that something is here that can control the environment, period.
And that's alarming.
Yes. And I hope they're friendly, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I can tell you, in my experience with this orb that continues to appear. I've never felt anything threatening, but it was funny. About a week, so I was talking to some folks on Capitol Hill, some high-ranking people that deal with intelligence and DoD matters, that said all this stuff is real. It's observed on our ISR platforms going in and out of deep space into here. A bunch of other things that I can't repeat. But I remember after hearing this from this group of people, I was so messed up over hearing it for 3 days. I mean, it wasn't like I couldn't function, but it really rattled me. I think it's one thing to hear it from somebody on a YouTube show or whatever, but when you're hearing it from high-ranking people that deal with national security issues on Capitol Hill, and they're telling you, yes, this is indeed real. It's not China. It's not Russia. It's a bipartisan national security issue. I mean, it really, really throws you. And right around that,
I'm going to have to take an emergency bathroom break.
Oh, you go.
My coffee saturation has reached a point where I can no longer ignore it.
Okay, you go do that, and then I'll just kind of rant for a little bit, and then we'll and then we'll
please excuse me for a minute. I'm really, it's not.
No, all good. Yeah, I know how that goes. But so anyway, so I have this whole conversation, and it was, I guess, my own form of ontological shock. And right around that time, I also began interviewing Robert Hastings. We spoke about him a little bit earlier in the broadcast, that has been researching the nuclear aspect of it. And I guess it was probably just a few days after those two events, woke up one morning to this crashing sound in the kitchen, and we thought somebody had broken in. And we had a camera in the kitchen to keep an eye on our dog, who was epileptic, the one that we had at the time. And you see this dog gate that was leaned up against a kitchen cabinet, plastic dog gate, and we have a tile floor. It was as if somebody took the dog gate and pushed it this way, and it fell right over. Oftentimes the gate would kind of, because it was on a slick floor, it would slide out like that, slide out from underneath itself. But this thing was sitting at an angle, air conditioning was off, there was no earthquakes, anything like that, and boom, the thing completely tipped over. And that was really kind of the beginning of the weird stuff. And then I think it was about 5 days later, we're outside at night, and all of a sudden, my wife says, what the hell is that? And I turn around, and the first thing I think is that it's a police helicopter. It's about 200 feet above the ground, probably about a quarter of a mile away, and it's coming right towards us. And having an aviation background and also cinematography, and I know what looks, what is a landing light, what is a helicopter, and I see Sean's coming back in. I'm telling my story, and immediately when I saw this thing, about 5 seconds later, I realized that the light quality was unlike anything I had ever seen, and it's coming right towards us, and then it completely fades out. Nothing there, no noise. And then it reappears about 3 or 4 seconds later, and it's on a direct track right towards the house, like I said, about 200 feet above ground level, and it continues this fade in, fade out. And probably the best way I could describe it was it had the same characteristics of a Firefly. This thing was probably about the size of a Mini Cooper, small car or something. So it gets right, it approaches us, and then it was almost like being blinded like a flashlight. Your eyes were flared. But it didn't hurt. And what was weird was the quality of the light looked looked like a welding arc, but it didn't hurt your eyes. So it gets right above the house and then starts going up and up and up. And it would, when it would reappear, it would, slightly different latitude, longitude. And like you said, it's appeared about 9 or 10 different times. It's probably around 10, I would say. But what I was getting at is, we had all of this bizarre paranormal stuff banging on the walls. Twice, I heard my name being called by somebody like right behind me. She had the same thing, banging on the walls, sounds of like furniture crashing in a room that you weren't in. Our dog would at night sit at the top of the stairs and growl looking down. So all of this like crazy stuff. And 5 years ago, if somebody had told me that, I would have thought they're nuts. But having experienced it myself, and what you were, I think what brought this up for me was talking about all of the things that happen that just don't seem to make any sense. And when you talk about it and you listen to yourself, it's like, man, that sounds like some crazy shit. But when you experience it for yourself and you can't explain it, it's hard to kind of process it sometimes. But when people people tell me stuff, it's like, you know what? I don't know, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me because I've certainly had some weird stuff happen.
And honestly, that's why when I talk to people, I don't focus on the proving, and it's not really important to me whether you can prove it or not. It has no bearing on me. My question is, how did it make you feel? How do you feel now? And what did you take from it? Because if it won't stand still and we can't take pictures of it and measure it and get a biography of it, then all we can share is our anecdotal experience. And that's worth something. I mean, I'll agree with anybody that on the one hand, eyewitnesses are the number one piece of evidence used in law enforcement to solve a crime or get somebody acquitted. At the same time, eyewitnesses are faulty. We're all faulty. We see things the way that we see them, the way that we perceive them. It's not always the same as the way everybody else perceives it. So we have to be more graceful with each other about how we approach these things. There's obviously, the folks that don't want to believe in it, that's fine. Go find somewhere where you can get together and not believe together, and you can validate each other.
It's called the Center for Inquiry. That's where you go for that. We'll talk about that another time. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you didn't. The rest of us have work to do.
Right.
And there's the idea that you and I, for as long as we've been talking about this, in recent history, are still having the conversation around, there's folks that don't even think this is happening. Mm-hmm. They literally, you've got shills out there for what reason? Is it personal? Is it just based at their rag that they work at? Or are they more likely being influenced by some of the powers that be to push back on this? But why? Why are they so ready to say that I'm going to attack people's professionalism, courage, integrity, etc., just to say, please don't listen to them?
Yeah, it makes, and that's where I keep going back to this whole thing of, you have to ask yourself, why are they spending so much time doing this? I mean, it's like, it's a lot. And, we've spoken extensively. Rob Heatherly, this guy on Twitter, who I've gotten to know, has been doing incredible work that has found this entire network that is dedicated to basically rewriting any Wikipedia page that has to do with anything they consider pseudoscience. So chiropractic, UAP, Bigfoot. I mean, I think they had edited something like 2,100 pages. And when you can go and look at these edits, they've been doing this. It's this group called the Guerrilla Skeptics. They've been doing it since 2010. And they have about 150-ish editors. And it's run by this 5013C here in California. But they've got this group of 150 editors that all they do is they go and rewrite Wikipedia, and they've been doing it so long. A lot of these folks have administrative privileges. So if I go in to try and fix my Wikipedia page, they have the seniority and they go and knock my edit out. And they essentially they wrote Lou Elizondo's page from scratch. They have they've rewritten David Grush's, Lou Elizondo, as I just said, ATIP. I mean, the list like goes on and on. Mm-hmm. But the thing that's interesting is, so you can look at the page history and see what the edits are. But when you go and you look at the archived, talk pages where the Guerrilla Skeptics editors are arguing back and forth with other editors trying to make reasonable edits, it's the amount of agenda that you see is just absolutely mind-boggling. And what they talk about is, the lady that runs this thing, is they understand that Wikipedia is, between like the 4th and 7th most trafficked site in the world. So somebody that is going to look up the Nimitz incident or whatever, they're going to go to Wikipedia. So when they do, they see this completely biased presentation of what has occurred. The intent is just insane, and it just goes back to this whole thing of why spend so much time telling somebody that Chewbacca isn't real. That's what I don't understand.
It shows an innate fragility. It shows a lack of maturity. It shows a lack of creativity. Frankly, it shows a lack of intelligence to look at something that has such a plethora of interest and intrigue to it, and to say that it attacks my sense of self. And my ego doesn't want to deal with it, so I'm going to push back as much as possible. And I frankly think that's what it comes down to. Is I think people that are on a track of selfishness, and this could get me in trouble, but I think a lot of people that are on a track of selfishness are on that debunker, denier path. And I'm not saying that I think that people should be believers. I don't believe in anything, Matt. I have my perception of my reality, and I have my sense of self. And those two things come together to give me a picture of my world. And in my world, this is occurring. And the mental health professionals that I've sought out to check me out have assured me that I don't have any mental aberrations, or I don't have any psychosis that would cause these things to happen. So therefore, I have an anomaly occurring. That's worth my investigation.
100%.
And maybe it hasn't happened to another person. And that's fine. Don't investigate it. But I find it strange that you have dedicated your life to say that my life is not occurring.
It totally is, and I think as well the kind of the reaching, and I think overall, when you go and you read the Guerrilla Skeptics, it's thousands of pages of talk pages between them and other editors. You just see this sort of abject arrogance that they know how the world works, and this is all bunk, and I couldn't agree with you more. Say that again.
Rob did amazing work, uncovering that. I met Rob last year, him and Shannon.
Oh, good. Okay.
His good friend out at the Ozarks UFO conference. A couple of fantastic guys, really dedicated to this. Again, and like a lot of us, don't understand why people are just attacking Lou and others like that. And these guys have really come out in support. And I truly appreciate what Rob's done and what others have done. People are going through Wikipedia and removing bona fides. Yeah. It's so disgustingly immature to go through and say, well, I can't attack their work, I can't attack their integrity, so I'm just going to try to attack them as a person, and I'm going to remove their PhDs, and I'm going to remove the other things that would lend credence to this, and try to erode it as much as possible. That's not science. That's not the way we do things. That's disgusting.
It is disgusting. And what's funny too is part. Oh, I know what I was going to say. In one of her seminars to a local skeptics group, she stated specifically, we understand that Wikipedia is the best mechanism for us to proselytize skepticism or debunking. I mean, they totally get it, and they're very smart about it. And what's funny too is they don't only debunk articles on Wikipedia; they actually write articles for the debunkers. So the person that wrote the few people out of her group that wrote Mick West's Wikipedia page, it is freaking glowing. It is perfect, immaculate, flattering, science writer, all this BS. But when you go and you read David Grush's page that they have hijacked, it's a night and day difference. I mean, it totally is. So enough of that. So Sean, what have you been up to? What are you up to? What do you got coming up?
Well, right now my daily attention is taken up by a company called Nanu. I'm very proud of it. I work there with quite a few other people, Holly Ann Wood and our CEO Nicholas Martin. Nick has developed something really incredible. He has been working on a community app the last couple of years. It's for the people, by the people. There will be no sale of any kind of data. Data privacy and protection is of the utmost importance to us. But the app will be featuring archives. It will have a community involvement app. It's going to give people a more moderated and I'm careful with the word, but a safer place to have this conversation, a place where the people we just discussed, people who are frankly on the payroll to troll people who are trying to uncover these anomalous events and understand them, and they're just there to troll them, those folks are going to be moderated out of the community. We look forward in the next couple of months to launching a podcast to discuss some of the larger, broader aspects around UAP. We want to talk about some of the bigger ideas, things like what does the double slit experiment mean to the average person? The fact that we've determined that the observer effect is a reality and that it requires your consciousness to determine whether an event occurs or not and when it occurs in time. Those things have really big implications for individuals and humanity as a whole. And the debunkers aren't going to be anywhere near these conversations.
Thank God.
we believe in the 3 Ds. We want to we want to discover, we want to discuss, and disclose. And we have a way that we're going to go about that between our podcast and other community involvement, community-based involvement around the app. There's 1,000 other questions I'm sure people have. If they're interested, they can go to projectnanu.com. But we're very proud of it. In the next couple of months, we're going to be announcing more specifically some of the things that we're going to be working on. We'll be releasing a beta. We'll be getting community managers to come in and start providing that place for people to land. And it doesn't matter. I know we made a few jokes earlier about Bigfoot or Chewbacca, but if that's your realm, you'll have a place to have an actual scientific, pragmatic conversation where your anecdotes will have value, where your evidence will have value, and where people are not going to be surrounding you trying to pick you apart. They're going to try to find out what you have. I could go into it in more depth, but we're going to save that for the first episode of our podcast, probably.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to cover it, and I'm super excited. And I really am excited to hear the openness and the transparency. There is one outfit that has an app that will remain nameless, but I remember one day I just out of the blue got this message, and I had never even contacted this outfit. I had the app sitting on my phone initially because I was curious what it was, but out of the blue on Facebook Messenger, I get a message from this outfit that says, we want to hear about your UAP experience. And this was before I ever went public with mine. And when I was at Seoul, the person that is the CEO of this outfit was lurking in the background, had their last name covered with a piece of white tape, and it's like, man, I don't trust these people as far as I can throw them. But the whole data privacy thing, man, that is everything. And so I'm really excited that you guys are approaching it in such a transparent, honest way. That's how it should always be.
Well, I can't say that the other folks that you were mentioning in the field that we're not aware of, and we're not aware of the stories that come out, we're very perturbed. But frankly, if you want to show me the high road by showing me the lower road that you're willing to take, I'm going to take the high road.
I love that. And man, next time you're in LA, we are definitely going to have to meet up for lunch. I mean, I don't drink, but a beer or whatever. But be good.
Just coffee today for me.
Yeah, good to see you. So we do have some really great news. regarding the Soul Foundation. So tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, the Soul videos will go live. 9 a.m. Pacific, we have an exclusive interview with Dr. Gary Nolan, Dr. Peter Skafish, and Dr. Kevin Knuth. And the interview with Dr. Nolan and Dr. Skafish, we had to pre-record that earlier today. Their day tomorrow is booked up. But we're going to, on tomorrow's show, again, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll put a link up later. But we're going to have that extensive interview with Dr. Nolan and Dr. Skafish talking about Soul, the future of what is going on with the Soul Foundation. And after that, for the who will be joining us live is Dr. Kevin Knuth, a physicist that has spent considerable amount of time figuring out the observed energy that these things operate with, the physics of it. He's a very well-known physicist, and he presented at Soul, and man, my mind was just blown away by the detailed data that he had. So anyway, that's our news for the day. And man, we're just super excited for Soul, super excited for what you guys are doing. And I think the thing that's just really great about this is people like yourself, people like the Soul Foundation, our show. I'm going to leave people out, so I don't like to list. Vinnie Adams, Tiny Klaus, all these folks are really putting out quality content, because this subject is bigger than one person. It's bigger than any political party. This is all about us as a species, and we need people like yourself out there speaking from your heart, which you always do, about your experiences and how you view this topic. So Sean, I really appreciate you coming on, and congratulations on the new stuff. Can't wait to see it. I know it's just going to be top notch.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you for what you do and giving a voice to people like me and other folks around who are willing to work on this.
You're very welcome, and Chewbacca all the way. See you soon.
You too.